Hey, it's Mike from Apollo, and we've got three massive things to tackle together on this video: positioning, pipeline, and conversion. I have written a lot of notes on this. I hope I get through all of it and remember all of these details, because these three things were the top three things that I got back from 20 different startups that I'm doing a big growth session with this week. And they told me a bunch of things that are causing them some sleepless nights. Comes down to three things, and we're going to start solving them right now. Big thanks to Brendan at Founder Fridays, Lucinda at Stone and Chalk, who put the event together and brought their communities together. I'm really looking forward to it. And let's talk about what's killing growth, these three nasty topics. So when you hear people in a startup talking about a growth challenge, invariably it's like sales is flat, maybe a little under, revenue is flat. And these are usually these flags that are raised, and that we need to fix it. The funny thing is that often people think that the solution is to do more. Let's do more outbound email. Let's spend more on advertising. Let's make more content. Let's do more of this and that. And that's invariably dealing with the symptoms, and it's not really necessarily dealing with the causes. So what we're going to do today on this video is we're going to address all three, look at the causes, and look at some of the best practices to get out of them, so that you can stop just doing more as a solution to these kind of problems. So we got three things: the positioning of your startup, the pipeline of your startup, and conversion. And I've put them in this order because they do kind of nicely go in this order. So let's break down how to think about those three problems. If customers, prospects, for example, come to your website or hit a landing page or any asset, and they don't instantly relate to and understand what you as a startup do, you really have a positioning problem. Yes, some of your messages may be incorrect, but you haven't thought through the positioning of your business. And so this will help you there. If nobody's booking meetings, and this is particular to B2B, if people aren't adding you to their wish lists and their carts for B2C, it's all the same thing. You haven't built enough trust. So yeah, you can't get enough meetings in the calendar, but the real cause of that was there wasn't sufficient trust for them to book that meeting. And then when we get to conversion, nothing's closing. When nothing's closing, this is invariably much more of an urgency. This is much more of a proof, or that really the risk is just too high. So you've got a risk problem there. So it's really interesting how you can reshape, oh, I have a positioning problem, I've got a pipeline problem or a conversion problem. You can actually think deeper and better about them. Now, one of the other things, apart from just doing more stuff, more marketing, more sales to try and fix this problem, the other thing is that people love to buy a good new tool. And maybe that does help. But before knowing that, it's really time to pause and go deeper on each of these three killer topics that really hurt startups, and actually figure out what's going on, why that's happening, and what are the best practices for you to fix it. Let's talk about number one, positioning. So positioning for me actually has a lot of really rigorous frameworks and approaches to positioning. Particularly if you get up into the enterprise, there's a lot of sophisticated ways of positioning your large multinational company. Let's just keep it simple today, and let's kind of start with what's not positioning. If you say we're in healthcare, or we're AI for healthcare, or we help companies be more efficient as a way of anchoring what you do so it's understandable, i.e. it's positioning, the reality here is that is really weak. And even as I say it, it's like, even if you said AI in healthcare, what exactly is that? You notice that there's a tendency to be too generic, too broad. And what you're certainly not doing is speaking to the problem that the customer experiences, the pain that they experience, hopefully on a daily basis, and then it really matters, or the gains that they're looking to achieve in the larger context of the jobs they have to do, whether it's B2B or even B2C. We have jobs to look good, buy nice clothes. That's a job to be done. So the point that I'm making here is you can't afford to be generic, and you can't hope that the word AI before whatever comes after solves all your problems. It just simply doesn't do that, because In positioning, what you're really saying is this is a proxy for, do people understand exactly who we are and what we're trying to do, and have that sense of interesting rather than still not sure what they do. So I would like to fix that with you now. In fact, what I'm going to do is take a really super simple framework, and it's all based on the value proposition canvas. So I talk quite often about that. It's a great tool. And what it does is help you frame everything you do, not from your perspective, but from your customer's perspective. So I'm going to give you a really simple template right now for positioning that you could literally go and change on your website in minutes and start being much more focused, much more specific to your customers, and positioning to them in such a way that they understand, relate to, and get what you do. Because then after that, they might be willing to get in your pipeline, and they might be willing to convert as well. So here goes. I give you an example from a great Australian startup, Canva. I'm going to read to you theirs using this template, and then I'm going to demonstrate to you how you can use it too. So Canva would say, how would they position themselves? So this is me doing their positioning for them. At Canva, we're for non-designers who need pro visuals. We have an online design platform that makes graphic design super accessible to everyone. And unlike Adobe, we're just simple drag and drop. That is their positioning. So let's unpack a little bit what just happened there. So we use this structure, which is starting with, most importantly, the customer. For this customer, in that case, it was the non-designer. And the thing is that, like, non-designers, especially saying amateur, but they might be amateur in design, but they want pro visuals. And that's the interesting product tension that they solve. So they need pro visuals. We have an online design platform. And it's super accessible for everybody. And unlike Adobe, it's drag and drop. So you see a reference to a competitor, so you anchor that, we're not them, and here's how we're different. Super drag and drop. And of course, you might wordsmith this a little bit, but I'll tell you what, a statement like this is so good and so clear. If you're struggling with positioning, that should be on that first row, on that first strip of the parallax bar. That should be at the heart of how you communicate. If you're really struggling with this will do you 10 times better than some poor AI for healthcare example. So you notice what we did is we anchored in their problem, their job to be done, mentioned ourselves just a little bit, and we certainly had a clear point of view on how we are not, in this case, like Adobe. I'm someone that has personally made the transition from Adobe to Canva, and I'm absolutely delighted, and this rings true. This, I'm like, hell yeah. And what's really interesting, as an aside here, is when the promise in the product and the promise in the marketing come together, this is why you get unicorns like Canva. Because the product, it does what the marketing says, and the marketing does what the product says. It is a beautiful harmony. It is, when they're at their best, it's what Apple and Nike do as well. Okay, so there we go. We've made it understandable and relatable. The real test here of your positioning, someone you don't know looks at the top of your homepage, spends 15 seconds there and gets it. Interesting. Not, I still don't really know what these guys do. And what exactly is this? That's what you don't want. Okay, so we've talked about positioning. Think about this as sort of a more top of funnel thing, but it should be echoed throughout the funnel. Let's now move to what would happen in a lot of companies, sort of the next step. You're out there positioning yourself, doing some content, doing some marketing. So now it's time to build that pipeline. B2B or B2C, doesn't matter. You want to build the pipeline. You want to get people bookmarking, wish listing your products for consumer transactions or for businesses. Really important. A lot of transactions are pre-researched on the internet. So before they book a demo, they are already going from their long list to their short list. So you may, in fact, if you get to demo time, you might be on the last 3. So if you've got pipeline problems, you've given business to your competitors. Okay, so what usually happens with pipeline, when you look at it and say the numbers are not great, they're not moving super quick, we're all stuck in the early part of the pipe, or there is a step that in particular they all seem to stop in your pipeline. Maybe they've had a diagnosis and they stop. There's a lot of things going on here. You know, you're asking for meetings, you're asking for email addresses. These are all the things that are getting you towards that moment of conversion. And if you're seeing a lot of low responses there, no level of re-engineering your homepage and your booking page will really fix this. Like, you won't build a better button for book a call that dramatically changes this. What will dramatically change your pipeline is give some value first before you ask. And I'm going to talk about this. This is what I call tools for trust. Let's start the conversation in the pipeline. Let's not talk about us. Let's talk about the customer. What are the challenges they have? Let's diagnose their problem. How do they compare and benchmark with their competitors? Let's really get into the problem. In fact, one of the smartest guys on the planet, Albert Einstein, he said, it's all about spend time on the problem and the solution shall reveal itself. Well, we're kind of doing a bit of an Einstein here. We're giving them tools to build the trust such that when we do ask for a demo, an email or whatever, they are more than willing. Okay. So how do we do it? 6 things that I see constantly working as tools for trust. ROI calculator, assessment scorecard, a checklist, an assessment that profiles or archetypes their problem, a playbook, a benchmark report. These things, it's funny, it could be healthcare, it could be government, it could be high-tech, fintech, edutech. They all seem to work. I'm not saying that you have to do all of these. I'm saying you need to test and know which one works well for your business to build trust with your customers. So you do these tools for trust. You talk about them, and guess what? You have answered this question, but what's in this for me, the customer? So that you have given insight, new value to them. So when you say, hey, let's do a call, they're like, absolutely, because that diagnostic tool was fantastic. I just can't imagine how good a call would be with these guys. Put that value up front. Not only will you qualify your lead, you'll build trust with your lead, and you'll get a willingness for them to participate and move through the funnel. So if you want to think about converting your customer, you're really talking about trust. And it's really the things you did to build trust throughout the steps preceding and in that conversion moment. If you are a mystery to them, they'll probably never seriously consider you. Maybe you need to show ISO certification. Maybe you need to show data and privacy case studies. There's a ton of things that we can do here as we get towards the conversion. So we've now filled a pipe, which was filled from great positioning beforehand. So we've got those first 2 steps working well. Let's get into conversion. Okay, so I work with some killer sales coaches and advisors, and I'm always amazed at the different selling methods. There's spin selling, medic. There's a number of different frameworks. Some of them will work for you. But invariably what I see, if we take a broader product look at conversion, particularly as we move from founder to product and marketing led sales, what's really interesting is that the trust and urgency is what is missing in order to get the conversion. We've talked a little bit about those tools for trust, and that's playing out really big at the moment of conversion. But it's there's a lot of things coming together in conversion. You might see, I got a whole list of things here. Maybe pricing hasn't been validated. Maybe the call to action is a bit weak, or I was with a client yesterday. There was too many calls to action on the page. I said, please, can we just have one next step, proof of urgency, or it just feels like a big risk. These are all the things playing out, converging on that. Buy now, book now, subscribe now. That's all kind of actually coming to bear. So actually the real truth here is that unless you test what builds trust and what builds the urgency, you will never refine this and optimize this. And it, much like what we talked about with your pipeline, whilst the tools and the practices are, in this day and age, they're quite standardized, it's the combination, the timing of is always the unique factor. I have one client that is amazing with paid Google search. They could not spend more money on Google search because they literally own the category. But a paid Google search method for another one of my clients would be the worst solution. So there you go. Not all the same tools are relevant and specific for every company. You've got to find your recipe. So we want to create some trust and urgency. Here's a bit of a checklist that I've made for you. You should be as the pipeline gets towards conversion and then at conversion, just before customer stories, case studies, references, demos, pilots, workshops, guarantees. And now let's get into the really nitty gritty: pilot, trial, proof of concept, money back guarantee. Those are the sort of things that where you have the courage to guarantee service, satisfaction, delivery to your customer. These are all required. It's not just a better closing argument or a better rebuttal to objections that are raised. Maybe you need to load up your proof, load up your urgency, load up your credibility such that they are nodding along with you rather than, I just don't know. And if you're feeling that I just don't know, let me get back to you, things are taking longer and longer, it's not just a sales thing. It's the proof, it's the credibility, it's the trust, and building the urgency to do so. Now, the interesting thing is I work with another client in compliance, and the fascinating thing is in their industry, you think the simple technique is, hey, there's a government body that regulates you to be compliant, and you use that as a big stick. Now, the nuance here is actually that's considered super aggressive, but also pretty unpleasant. So what we're discovering is, yes, hey, we all know we need to be compliant, but maybe we can be more efficient in the back office. And the nods that they get when you start talking about that, perfect. You really need to be testing what is landing, what is working. Okay, so let's do a quick recap first of all. If you're thinking about these 3 big blockers in your sales funnel, things that are killing growth, if you've got positioning challenge, you've invariably got to consider, have we just been too generic? If you've got a pipeline problem, have we got tools for trust? Have we really given some value first before we ask? And if you have a conversion problem, think about that risk and urgency dimension. Maybe you haven't solved that. So no end of sales calls, techniques, and improvements will actually solve it because they're still just saying this is too big a risk. So positioning, pipeline, conversion. We've really gone deep into thinking about this. And what I hope you take away is that in order to go deeper, you have to ask why. In order to start this whole journey, just start with your customer and your prospect and really check it off. Have we positioned clearly? Do they understand? Have we given enough value before we ask for value back? Have we got urgency? Have we got the trust? Have we taken out the risk such that they can really get on board? If you do those things, what you're going to realize is it's a bit of a grind, it's hard work, but really it's not like a big black box of mystery. It is methodical, rigorous. I often talk about this forensic, traceable, evidential approach, figuring out what works and optimizing. It's not just more activity. It's not just more tools. It's thinking better. So what I really encourage you to do when you think about these 3 big challenges, positioning, pipeline, and conversion, is find your weakest link and fix it and keep testing and learning, and you'll be on your way to building a growth engine. All right, that's it for this time. I'll see you again.